Okay, so this is transformer testing on lab 10 for EST-102, and in this lab we will try to know how to test a transformer. There are two types of ignition systems we have. One of them is the transformer, which will change the power from 110 volts to 10,000 volts. The other type is the electronic transformer. So the transformer supplies power to the electrodes, and the power that we have in here is around 10,000 volts. So 10,000 volts. And the power coming in here is 110 volts. And we have two types of transformer. One of them is regular transformer. That's the big heavy one with a lot of winding. And we have also the electronic, which is very lightweight and can produce up to 15,000 volts. Okay, so this is a regular transformer which has a lot of winding. So in here we have 110, 115, and you can see there is less winding in here, and we are inducing current through this iron core. For the secondary voltage there is a lot of winding, and if you look here it's around 60,000 turns to get 10,000 volts. So that's why the transformer is very heavy, and it's also insulated because we want to keep the wires from conducting to each other. The less insulation we have, the less voltage you will have in here. So the goal is to produce 10,000 volts. We use electromagnetism and induction power through the iron core. There's iron core involved, and also copper wiring, small winding for the primary, and the secondary is 60,000 turns. The primary is always the input, and the secondary is always the output. Okay, so it transforms 120 volts approximately to 10,000 volts. And for the electronic transformer, they are called solid state, so meaning there is no winding inside. It's electronic. It has a way to magnify power up to sometimes 20,000. This is 14,000, not 140. This is a typo here. It's 14,000. So it does the job very well. Okay, so again, this is a picture of the transformer and the anatomy of it. This is my iron core. This is the primary coil where we have 110 volts, and this is the secondary where we get the 10,000 volts. And this is the arc that we want, and the arc color usually is blue. So blue is good. That means we got the right temperature that we want out of this transformer. Few facts about them: they are tire insulated, so there's possibility of it melting. If it gets too hot, it will melt, and if it melts, then we have less voltage output. If it smokes, that means it's burning, and that means something went wrong with the insulation inside. Moisture is a problem for tar because it's tar insulated, so moisture can cause you to raise some bacteria, and that will eat the tar. If bacteria eat the tar, you have less insulation between the wires, and you have less voltage. It has very high electrical consumption. It's equivalent to 100-watt bulb. So if you keep the transformer on the whole time, it will consume a lot of power. So that's something you have to consider when you use the transformer. They also degrade over time, and at some point the industry was leaning towards electronic ignitors, but they did not last as long. So everybody's going back now to regular wind-up transformers. But over time, overheat, it will lose the ability to give you 10,000 volts. And this is why we do this testing, to know if it's actually running correctly or not. So how do we test them? So the first way to test them is using a transformer tester. If you look here, we have two alligator clips that it will clip to the transformer, and this will tell you in here how much voltage you're getting out of it. Again, it's always good idea to keep this running for 10 minutes, because sometimes it will give you 10,000, then it will degrade over time and it will go down. So this is one way. Do not use your multimeter to test the transformer, because again, this is 10,000 volts, and your multimeter is rated at only 600 volts. So use a tester. The other way to do the testing, if you don't have, let's say you don't have this tester, what are you gonna do? You can test the resistance across the primary. So this is my primary, right? This is the primary here. So you test that, and it should be around 3 ohms, plus or minus 10%. So between 2.9 and 3.1, that should be good resistance. Then you can test the secondary. This is your secondary here, so you can test for resistance, meaning that there's no voltage coming into your transformer, and you should be around 1200 ohms, so 12 kilo ohm, again plus or minus 10%. That should indicate a good transformer. This is two ways to test a transformer. Going back to testing transformer, another way to test a transformer, the one with the winding, is to test the resistance between each one of those prongs. So if you see here, we are grounding and we're testing the resistance. So you'll measure the resistance from this prong and the ground, and this one and the ground, and they should be within 10% of each other. If it's a big difference, then something wrong with that transformer and you have to change it, and it will still work, but it's not going to give you enough voltage. Again, you can consult the manufacturer if it's a new transformer and see how they can test it, and sometimes they will just take it and replace it for you. Another way to test a transformer, this one is less have less convection, and it's very subjective to your conditions, which says you should bring the prongs together within half an inch and power the transformer and look for the color. It should be blue. Blue means good. If it's orange, then it's not giving you enough power. But again, it's very subjective, and again, you have to wait and leave it on for 10 minutes. It might start as blue, then as it heats up, it might goes back to orange. Leave the spark for 10 to 15 minutes again to check. If it changes, then replace. That's really not that. It's very difficult to judge by color, so I really don't recommend this way. Another way to do it, which I find more practical, is to put an ammeter in series, or you can use a clip-on meter, put it in a loop once or twice, and turn it on and leave it on and check for amperage drop. So place an ammeter in series, check for amperage drop. It should stay within 10%. So if we start with, for example, 2 amps, and after 10 minutes it became 1.5 amp, that's 25% drop, which is not really good. That means the transformer is bad. So there's another way to test a transformer. So that's we have 3 ways now to test a transformer. First one is use tester. Second one is measure resistance from primary and secondary. Primary should be 3 ohm, secondary should be 12 kilo ohm, and measure amperage while it's on. It should not drop more than 10%. So these are a few ways that you can measure a transformer, and it's a good way to know if it's working or not.